If you are seriously considering selling your house in southern Maine and Seacoast, New Hampshire, you are in the right place. It's July and it's time for a market update. I'm your host, Cam Avery, a local resident and real estate agent, and we're here at Aubrey's Coffee Shop, which is one of my favorite places. I've got a nice caramel macchiato. Let's get into it. So let's kick things off by talking about York County. The biggest thing in everyone's mind right now is, well, what is my home worth? And good news, the median home price is $517,000 in York County, which is actually up 3.4% year over year. This tells us that buyer demand is still strong and you still have a really hot market in York County. And you might be wondering about our closed activity. And right now, year to date, there's 758 closed properties, which is actually right around the same as it was this time last year. And so homes are still selling at about the same rate that they were last year. One key metric that we always talk about is days on market. Now, as a seller, this is probably the most important number for you to understand. And we're seeing that actually begin to slightly decrease. And so last month it was higher. Now it's back down to 12, which is right around where it was last year. And so we are seeing homes that are priced competitively still selling, but the key metric there is priced competitively. And so you have to make sure that when you go to price your property that you're in its correct position in order to capitalize on those average days on the market. And speaking of pricing, sellers really need to be aware of the list to sold price ratio, which is essentially saying for every $100, how much are you getting as a seller? Right now, that number is 99.8%. And so that tells us that it's very much still a seller's market. You know, in a buyer's market, the list to sold price ratio can be as little as 80 to 85%. So it's still very much a seller's market here in York County. However, one thing that we really need to note is those days on market, as they begin to increase, we start to see more inventory come on the market. And so we are seeing homes not necessarily selling as quickly, which means if you are seriously considering selling, it's really important that you have a licensed real estate agent come and talk about positioning and where your home should sit in the market, which, shameless plug, if that is something you're interested in, click the link right in the description below and schedule a direct consultation with us so that we can make a game plan for getting your house sold for the most amount of money possible. Also, let's talk about the median price per square foot. So this is another metric that we can use to gauge what price they're selling for. And in York County right now, the median price per square foot is $316. This is actually up 3.6% year to date. And so we are seeing that slight appreciation year over year across the board. Now, for those of you that are considering selling, a really important metric is that new listing inventory is actually up 25%. And so even though the amount of sold properties has stayed the same, we're seeing a significant uptick in listing inventory. So what does that tell you? More houses on the market, more supply, right? So supply and demand. And so if we have more supply and demand is right around the same, it means that prices are going to start eventually to come down. And so it's something that we need to be aware of, is that we could begin to start seeing a shift come quarter three, quarter four of this year, where prices begin to either stabilize or potentially even start dropping. We definitely have seen more price reductions in the last 6 months than we've seen probably in the last 3 years. And I think that's one of those leading indicators that the market is beginning to level off and slightly even, come down in price as buyers are, dealing with high interest rates. They're dealing with a little bit of fear in the marketplace. And so all these contributing factors play into the market here in southern Maine and Seacoast, New Hampshire. All right, so now let's shift our focus to the Seacoast, New Hampshire market. If you're in this area, you'll definitely want to hear these numbers. And even if you're in southern Maine, Seacoast, New Hampshire, they're really interchangeable in many respects, although there are definitely some significant differences, obviously, when it comes to taxes and demand and things like that. Some people have to live in New Hampshire versus Maine. So, talking about right now, the median sales price in Seacoast, New Hampshire is actually $599,000, reflecting very strong demand, and it's actually up 3.3% year to date. And so we're still seeing that consistent appreciation. Now, in terms of closed sales, we've seen 469 closed sales, which is actually a 7.9% decrease in the Seacoast of New Hampshire. And so this might seem like a slowdown, but it's often just a reflection of lower inventory in highly desirable areas. Less homes for sale means less homes are going to sell. And so, speaking of, speed of when homes are selling, homes in the Seacoast are absolutely flying off the market right now. The median days on the market is just 7 days, which is actually the same as it was last year. And so this is incredibly fast and highlights the intense buyer competition for homes in this sought-after region. So if you're a seller here, homes are still moving quickly. And finally, the median sold per square footage is $285, which is up 2% year to date. And this indicates, while although the median price is higher, price per square foot is still appreciating, contributing to a very high demand and contributing to continued growth for homeowners. And so what does this mean for you specifically if you're thinking about selling a home or buying a home in the area? In both York County and Seacoast, New Hampshire, buyer demand remains strong and homes are still selling relatively quickly. When we look at the overall country as a whole, it's still definitely a seller's market in this area. Homes priced correctly are still selling and are selling for either at or above asking price. However, the increase in inventory in York County means that it's more important than ever to make sure that when your home comes on the market, it becomes the obvious choice for buyers. In other words, your home, when you come to the market, you're either going to sell your home or you're going to help sell your neighbor's house. So it's incredibly important that you position your house correctly so that buyers look at it and they decide to make an offer on your house versus the competition that's in the market right now. So my biggest takeaway right now is that opportunity is knocking. As things are up in the air and questions arise about what the future is, right now is still a good time to sell your house. But to truly capitalize on this market, you need a strong strategy. And so this includes, number one, accurate pricing. Don't just guess. Look at market data and make an objective decision based on what the market is telling you for your specific property. Number two, strategic presentation. So it really comes down to how your property is shown and making sure that it's shown in your best light. And number three, expert marketing. So don't just use cookie cutter marketing. Don't just put a sign in the ground and call it a day. Look for creative agents that are doing different things to get your property sold. And so if these numbers sparked your interest and you're curious about what your home is worth in today's market and you'd like to talk more about our strategy for getting your house sold, again, click the link right in the description below to schedule a consultation with us today.